everyone. I want to welcome you to part 1 of my week 11 video, and it is the elements of drama. So we're entering our 3rd unit on drama, and I think it's one that you will enjoy, hopefully, because we're going to be watching a film together and reading the novel that became the basis of the screenplay for that film. So if you want to follow along with me, go to content and then course documents, and then look for the elements of drama, and you'll have to hit load more because these documents are all uploaded in alphabetical order, and so hit load more and you'll see the elements of drama. So we know that drama is a story told through action and dialogue by actors who are impersonating characters. But drama has some conventions, some rules, and so they require what Coleridge called a willing suspension of disbelief. So you'll kind of see what he means as we're going through these. So we have to accept the fact of impersonation or representation, the idea that these actors are pretending to be someone whom they're not, right? We have to willingly suspend our disbelief. And we have to imagine and accept the idea that the stage has to be regarded as the real actual scene or setting. And we have to accept the conventions of what we call asides. And this will come back to haunt you on that exam on literary terms. So, you might make a note of it. Asides are lines spoken by an actor that are intended to be heard by the audience, but not by the other actors on the stage. So when you see that word asides, think of someone kind of stepping aside and talking to you, the audience, so you can hear what the actor is saying, but we pretend that the other actors on the stage are doing something else or whatever, and they don't hear. Another convention that you have to accept is called soliloquies, and that's a term that means a character talking when alone, right, all by himself or herself, kind of talking to himself or herself. So think of solitary soliloquies, and you'll remember that one on the exam. Now, sometimes I talk to myself, and often I do it when I'm in the car. So I'll be driving along. I might say something not very nice about someone who's tailgating me or something like that. But often I'm just kind of talking to myself, and I'm like, oh, we really have to get that grading done when we get home, and then we need to cook dinner, or whatever. And it suddenly occurred to me that I am calling myself we. That is really weird. I don't know what the deal is there, but that's pretty weird. My dad used to say to me, it's okay if you talk to yourself. It's just when you start answering yourself that I'm going to get worried. So that's soliloquies. Another convention of drama that we may need to accept is the idea that ordinary people are speaking in this highly poetic kind of language. So especially if you're watching something like a Shakespearean play, you're going to hear language that feels really strangely formal and different. And we must accept the idea that actors on the stage are always going to speak more loudly than is natural because they learn to project their voices. Now, my daughter became a child actor in Los Angeles. We lived there for 10 years, and we went there because of her acting. And she had done some pretty cool things as a kid actor, but she started out as an actress on the stage and as a singer. And so when we got to LA and she began doing television and film, she had at first to be reminded, you don't have to project your voice anymore because you're not on a stage anymore. You're in front of the camera. And so then we also have to accept the possibility of a Latin phrase, in medias res, and that means into the middle of affairs. And this phrase will also haunt you on that exam on literary terms. So that little phrase refers to a literary technique in which a story begins after the action has already started, and the explanation of plot and the characters and their roles the importance of the setting, and so on and so forth. All those things are left to be revealed via a flashback or a character's thoughts or dialogue or a reverse chronology in which the story is kind of told backwards. So I'm sure you've seen movies where you begin, right in the middle of something, like maybe you're in a chase scene, or someone has been murdered, if it's like a murder movie or television program or whatever. And so you don't know what has happened up to that point until a flashback reveals it or something like that. So that's that technique. Drama requires a balance between empathy and aesthetic distance. So remember, we're viewing art, not real life. So we have to kind of keep that in mind. And then also, drama requires that we remember the fact that the reading of dramatic literature, the reading of a play or a screenplay, is usually a poor alternative to actually watching the play in the theater or watching a film on the screen. And so that's why we're going to both be reading the novel that is the screenplay version of Amistad and watching the actual film. And I will just make this very clear. The film is graphic, particularly in the very beginning, because we are watching a scene on board a slave ship, and it's very, very graphic. So if you have a problem with that, if that's a situation that's really disturbing to you, then let me know via a private email, and I will allow you to just simply read the novel by Alex Pate, rather than both reading and watching the film, and then you can write only about the novel. But hopefully you are able to watch the film. As graphic as it is, it's important, I think, in a lot of ways for us to grasp just how horrific these conditions truly were. So the elements of drama, just like we looked at the elements of fiction and the elements of poetry, now we're looking at what makes up good drama, the techniques that screenplay writers use. So plot, just like a short story or a novel, a screenplay has a plot. So that's what happens in the play or in the film. So things to ask yourself about plot. Is the play following a traditional structure, or is it an example of in medias res, where it's starting in the middle of something, and then we're looking back, or we're sort of doing a reverse chronological order? What is the function of each act or scene, right? So every act in a play, every scene in a film has a purpose, it has a function. How are they relating to each other? And then what is the essential problem or conflict? There's always a conflict, right? In drama, just like there's always a conflict in a short story. This is why I watch The Young and the Restless every day of the world, because I'm all into that conflict. And then where is the climax or the turning point in the play or the film? And does the resolution seem appropriate and satisfactory? Have you ever watched a movie or a TV show, and you get to the end of it and you're like, crap, man, I was all invested in this thing, and then I got to the end and it just didn't seem appropriate, it didn't seem realistic or whatever, and you have sort of an uneasy feeling there. So hopefully the resolution seems appropriate. Compare the end of the play or the film back with the beginning. What major changes have happened? That gives you a lot of insight into what the theme might be, and how the characters are changing, and in what ways does the very first opening act or scene serve the important purpose of exposition. And that's a word that means explaining what has already happened, sort of explaining who the characters are and their relationship to each other, and the basic facts that you as a viewer need to understand. And how is that background information conveyed to you? So what important things maybe have already taken place, if it's an example of in medias res? And then does the play contain subplots? So we know that there's always going to be a main plot, a main course of action, but are there subplots kind of happening beneath the surface? What is their relationship to the main plot? So just as in fiction and poetry, we have characters. So ask yourself, who's the protagonist? Who's the main character through whose eyes we're seeing everything happening here? And who's the antagonist? Who's the person or the force in direct opposition to that protagonist? So it may be a person, it may be a force like slavery or nature, or it may be both people and a force, right? What is the function of the other major characters in that play or film? So, how are the characters sort of functioning? What's the function of the minor characters? So you may have just some sort of stock or flat characters who are just kind of there, but maybe they're there to add some information. You may have a BFF, of the main character who's just sort of the sidekick. What methods are used to establish and reveal the characters, and are the actions of the characters properly motivated, consistent, and plausible? Have you ever been watching a show and the character is established in a certain way, and then all of a sudden that character does something or says something that doesn't really seem plausible compared to everything you know about the character, and it just sort of breaks the whole feeling of that television show or that film? So that happens on The Young and the Restless a lot. Like the character will all of a sudden do something, you're like, no, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense that you did that or said that. It's a soap opera. What are you going to say? And then dialogue. How does the dialogue of the characters differ? So, maybe you have one character who's highly educated and the language is really elevated and formal. Maybe you have another one who come from Eastridge and talks like this. Maybe you have someone a character who is just sort of abrupt and doesn't say much, and maybe you have another character who is very warm and talkative. How do the differences aid in characterization? What stylistic devices contribute to the dialogue? So, poetic rhythm. All good writing has a sense of rhythm, including screenplays. Sound. What are the sounds in the film, right, that are coming through? Repetition of certain words or ideas. Puns or wordplay, comparison, allusion, imagery, irony, symbolism. We'll see a lot of those same elements of fiction and poetry coming through in the writing of a play or a film. Setting. What is the play or the film's time and place? To what extent does setting aid in characterization, establish and sustain the atmosphere, and influence the plot or the main theme? Setting is important. So theme. What is the play or the film's main theme that we're looking at? What are the main messages that are coming through here? How is the theme presented? Is it explicitly stated, or is it just kind of implied? And then what's the universal value or significance or meaning of that theme? Why does the message here matter in Amistad? And other aspects to consider in evaluating drama. So look at the title. What clues is it giving us to the main theme or the main ideas? You might look up the word Amistad and see what it means, and maybe there's some irony going on there. To what extent does the playwright, and notice that word, Playwright, not Playwrite, as in writing this way, but a person who writes a screenplay for a play or a film is called a playwright, and it's spelled just like that. So to what extent does the playwright make use of conventions like asides, soliloquies, a chorus? This one will haunt you on the exam on literary terms. So if we're watching a play, a chorus we think of as, like a high school chorus or something. But in theater, that refers to a group of actors who function as a unit. And this was a characteristic feature of Greek tragedy. So the members of the chorus share a common identity. And in some plays, the chorus participates directly in the action. In other plays, they're restricted to just sort of being off to the side of the stage, observing the action and maybe commenting on it every now and then. And so that's a chorus, not singers, but a group of people who all share a common identity. So Say if you're watching a play, maybe it's a group of businessmen. They have this common identity, and they're the chorus. And then also, to what extent is the convention of the three unities of time, place, and action coming into play? So the three unities is also going to come back and haunt you probably on that exam on literary terms. So the classical traditional unities or three unities are rules for drama that derive from a misreading of Aristotle's Poetics. So where he wrote down some rules, right, for drama. And so in their neoclassical form, here they are, the unity of action. A play should have one main action that it follows, with no or few subplots. Well, we know that, in modern plays and films, that isn't true. There's usually the main plot and a whole bunch of other little subplots going on. And then the unity of place. So the misreading of Aristotle's original ideas here says that a play should cover just one single physical space, and it should not attempt to compress geography, so it shouldn't ever go beyond that one space, nor should the stage represent more than one space or time or place at all, right? So we know that, again, in modern plays and modern films, the setting is changed on the stage all the time, and a play, might cover far more than just one place or space. And then the third unity is the unity of time, and the misreading of that said the action in a play should take place over no more than 24 hours. So we know that, again, that's absolutely not a valid rule. Some plays that you would watch on Broadway or whatever, they might span a period of years. So one scene might happen 50 years before, and the next scene might happen 50 years later, or something. And so what happened is that French scholars read and misinterpreted Aristotle's Poetics, which contained his rules for drama. And they thought, that the three unities should be the way I just read them to you, when actually that isn't what he meant. So this misreading led to all this bitter bickering between playwrights who wanted to creatively defy what they thought were the conventions and those who wanted to adhere to them. And so that's kind of interesting. So those are the elements of drama, and all of these things give you a lot to write about in this paper. And again, you want to use the terminology. Thanks for listening.